Good evening, everybody. Welcome, welcome. We are very excited to be here today with Chef Omar from Saffron De Twah. I'll say again, Saffron De Twah. It's a restaurant on the east side on Gratiot, just outside of downtown, just outside of downtown. Great little spot. They're doing, some awesome, the menu's changing. There's always something new and interesting on the menu. It's Moroccan cuisine, which I don't know a ton about. So I'm glad to have Omar here with us to talk about that. He's going to be making up a few different dishes with us today. So I'm going to try and capture some of the recipes and work with Omar to get those recipes down. So I can share those with you via email after the class. So you don't have to be, fervently writing notes, especially if you got a baby in your hands, like Michelle. So with that, if we could give a warm welcome to Omar and take it away.
Hello. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
How's it going?
Hi,
My name
great.
is Omar. I'm the chef owner of Saffron De Twah. We're a modern Moroccan restaurant on the east side. And this measurement thing, I want to tell you guys a quick story. My mother, when I was a child, I grew up working in her restaurant. So when I went to try to learn recipes from her, I was like, Mom, how much did you put in there? She's like, just a little bit. I'm like, what is a little bit? Like a small spoon. Like, what's a small spoon? I need like an exact amount. She used to say, I don't know. And I used to always get so upset. I'm like, Mom, I need an amount. And growing up, I learned that I started to do the same things to my cooks. Where they go, Chef, why does it say lemon to taste? And I have to look at them and say, do you think a lemon in July tastes the same as the lemon in September? They have different acidity levels, different amount of liquid in them. So I need lemon to taste. You should know what it tastes like. And that was the epiphany that I had that I'm sorry?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was reading out loud about the Saskatchewan. I need to mute myself. I'm sorry.
No worries. So today I want to go over a couple different ways of making some vegetables. A lot of people don't realize is that in Africa, access to meat is very limited, right? So in America, we're so used to meat being the center of the plate, and that's like majority of what we eat. And over there, meat is a treat, right? So meat is something that's eaten very rarely, and a majority of your vegetables is grains, or majority of your food is grains, vegetables, those types of things. So I want to feature a couple of traditional Moroccan things, and then also I want to show you a couple different techniques as far as vegetable preparation and doing some cool stuff, and give you some basic recipes that you can use and carry over. It's cool when you do cooking shows like Chopped or Top Chef or any of these like cool shows that everyone wants to watch. You don't have access to your phones. As soon as you get on set, they take your phone away from you. There's no access to the outside world, no internet, no books. So you have to have memorized recipes up here. And the way that I learned is the best way to do that is to actually just memorize ratios. And once you can memorize ratios, you can then apply those to anything and cook, right? So first thing we're going to do is I want to kind of go over waste kitchen. So for me, waste of product is very, very bad. What this was at one point in time is a daikon radish, right? So we peeled the daikon. Here's our peel. This ends up being our waste. That is it. What most restaurants end up throwing away is all this and all this and all this and all this. So one of the things that I hate about buying produce from a grocery store or from a vendor is they don't give you the tops of your vegetables. And most people don't know these tops are freaking delicious. They're very edible, right? And so it's such a waste to just get rid of them. So these are the tops of the daikons. I've just picked the leaves off the stems. And we're going to make a dish called Bakoula today, which is a braised green dish. You can do this with kale. You can do it with collards, mustard greens. And then these stems, again, a lot of people throw them away. We can slice them up. We can pickle them. We can braise them because they're a little bit tougher than the leaves, right? So we can't cook them with the leaves. You could cook them separate and then add the leaves in towards the end. It all depends on the vegetable you're cooking with. Some vegetables need a longer cook time. Some need a shorter cook time. So those stems are not going to go to waste. These we're going to do with our first cooking method. And our first cooking method is a quick and easy pickle. So in order to quick pickle something, what you need is vinegar, sugar, and water. So this is the ratio. You ready? This is 1 cup of sugar. 1 cup of vinegar. 1 cup of water. And that was vinegar on the floor. 1 cup of water. And we bring this to a boil. And then we pour it while it's boiling hot onto any sort of vegetable, any sort of product, onions, whatever you want to pickle. We can pour it onto these stems and it's going to pickle them. So I'm going to go ahead and put the stems in there. We're going to just pickle these stems. And you can use them as snacks. You can use them for breakfast, having pickles on the side of breakfast. See, these I've kind of sliced up for you already. So this I'm just going to throw on the stove, crank the heat up, let it come to a boil, and then we'll pour it on when it's done. All right. So at the end of the day, this was our waste on this entire daikon radish, which is a beautiful thing. And not only did we make some pickles, but we're going to have a whole nother dish that comes out of this one vegetable, which is pretty amazing. So these are all of our leaves that I've picked. For that, I'm just going to take an onion, a shallot. You can use whatever you'd like. I'm just going to go ahead and peel this real quick. Can you guys see my cutting board okay?
Yeah, it looks great.
Awesome. So when we peel a shallot, here's another thing people don't realize. Peel an onion. This onion peel right here. Most people just throw them away. I'll throw away this root end because that typically has a lot of dirt in it. And that's what can carry some illnesses. So this I will get rid of. But all these peels and all these tough skins, there's 2 things we can do with them. Type in the chat, give me some ideas of what you guys would do with these. And then I'll tell you what we do at the restaurant with them.
I make stock out of it.
Stock is a great one. What else? No other guesses? All right. So for those of us that have these at home, this is a really cool trick. I can take the skins and the onions. You can put them on a sheet tray on a rack so the air can circulate around them all the way. Put them in a dehydrator and dehydrate them. Similarly, you could do it in a cracked oven that's cooling and just keep doing that every time you use the oven. Just stick them in, let them dry out, let them dry out. Once you dry them out, you put them in a spice grinder. And what do you have?
Dried scallions.
Onion powder.
Onion powder. Exactly. So how much do we spend on onion powder? We spend a lot of money on onion powder at the store. So this is free onion powder based off of stuff that people normally throw away. Zero waste is like a huge part of sustainability in our restaurant and how we do things. So I'm just going to mince these shallots. We're going to use these for the Bakoula dish. And then there's a root end that holds the onion together. If I want diced like this, I leave the root end together. And that root end holds the onion together, the scallion together, while I come in and do my knife cuts. And then ta-da. And then we just throw this into our stockpile, dehydrate it, turn it into onion powder, whatever you want to do with this, okay? So we're going to go ahead and save these onions for our saute. Here I just have some ripped up cilantro and parsley and a couple cloves of garlic because everything tastes better with garlic. One of the
That's
things,
true.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just said that's true.
Yeah. One of the things that people don't know about garlic is if you cut open your garlic, and I didn't do it with the first two because I already know this is not sprouted garlic. If your garlic is sprouting and it has that green germ on the inside, take it out. Does anyone know why?
Can you grow another
Well, you could grow
garlic with
another
it?
one out of it, but more importantly, for humans, that part of garlic is very bitter and it's very hard to digest. It creates indigestion. So sprouted garlic is good if you take the sprout out. You don't want to serve the sprout to people. You actually want to take that out. So here we go. Got my garlic and onions in here, ready to go for Bakoula. We take you guys over here. Let you see.
Chef, can you spell that please for the so I can put it in the chat for the group?
Bakoula.
Yeah.
You'll see this is our water mixture. That's it. We just want to bring it up to boil. And then as you see, while it's boiling hot, we're just gonna pour that right. And as long as everything's covered, as it cools, it will pickle. One thing you did not see me put in, which I did in with the sugar, was a couple pinches of salt. Just helps round out the pickle. I had salt to all my sweets. This is a sweet pickle. If you want a savory pickle, just avoid the sugar. And you can do just vinegar, water, and salt. I really like sugar. The other thing that you can do is really cool is now that you know the ratio for a sweet pickle, you can start adding in different things. You can add black peppercorns, bay leaves, pickling spices, cinnamon sticks, whatever you want to pickle whatever flavor you want to impart in your pickle. Now's the perfect time to do that. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to roast a vegetable. So this is butternut squash. Pretty simple. Top, bottom, right down the center. There she is. This looks a lot different than your grocery store butternut. Notice they're not monstrous like the ones at the store. And what I'm going to do is just take a spoon. The spoon is way too big. Let me get a different spoon. The spoon is just as big. Let's see if it works. There we go. I'm just going to scrape out the seeds and the flesh on the inside of that. Now, the seeds inside of this butternut squash, you can rinse all this goop off the seeds, a little bit of oil and salt, a little bit of maple syrup. You can actually roast these seeds and they make a good little treat. We use them for ourselves. We don't use them for dishes in the restaurant at all, but it's a nice way to use them. Again, the less waste, the better. Now, if I wanted a butternut squash soup, what I would do is just simply cover this in some oil, salt and pepper, and I'd roast it in the oven just like this. And I'm going to go until it gets really, really, really soft. And then I'm going to, what's it called? Then I'm going to puree it while it's warm with whatever broth, et cetera, et cetera. For today's purpose, we're just trying to saute this. So what I'm going to do is a lot of people, they mess with peeling it now. and it's just too much work to peel it now. So I'm just gonna cut this into rounds. And I can peel it when it's roasted much, much easier than I can when it's not. Does that make sense?
Yep.
I'm asking you as if you're gonna actually answer me. So for this, I'll just cut these into rounds.
Yes, it does.
I want them about equal thickness. The reason I want them about equal thickness is A, presentation, right? B, if they're cut different sizes, let me show you here. If they're cut different sizes, I cut these two different sizes on purpose. This one's gonna be mushy before this one is fully cooked because this one's thicker. Does that make sense? So you wanna try and get them all cut equal sizes. Once you have it to about here, we'll just throw them on a sheet tray. You grab one. Ta-da. Give them a little oil, a little love. And then some salt. You want to season these pretty well. Now, when I cook, I always cook with kosher salt or sea salt. I never cook with iodized salts. So something to keep in mind. I'm going to go ahead and throw this in the oven. We have it set to 425. Alexa, set a timer for 20 minutes, please. She loves us. Okay, so we'll just check on those as we go. When they come out, we'll peel them, and then we'll be able to dice them up and mix them into our stuff. So next up, let's go over another preparation of a vegetable, and that's going to be fire roasting. So this is a red bell pepper. This is the poblano. So most people think burn is bad. It's bad, but what we're going to do here
Hey,
is
chef,
we're just going to burn them. Yes.
I just want to make a note for you. When you move your phone or you move your camera, it kind of cuts up for a few seconds. So just if you could just note that when you're doing transitions.
Okay. Sure. So always do this with a pair of tongs and not your bare hands. I learned that the hard way. And if you look over here, we're just blistering, right? We're just charring this. And we're going to char both the bell pepper and the poblano pepper. We're going to burn them all the way around. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put these in a moon bowl or in a bowl or in a pit, in a pot, whatever, and just put a lid on it. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow them to steam, and they'll continue to cook, but also it will release the skin from the pepper. And then what we'll have is this beautiful char roasted pepper that has that hint of smokiness, but we won't actually be eating this burnt stuff. That'll just peel right off. If I try to peel it off right away, it's not going to want to come off. It will, however, come off if we let it sweat in a pan or in a bowl that's covered. So we're just going to let this do its magic. And there is no, I didn't burn it enough. You've never gone too far on this. And this is like a 5-6 minute process. I remember when I was younger, they have these machines that just blow flames into this big giant barrel that has a bunch of holes poked in it, and they just fill it with peppers and they tumble it and they just blow these flames in there, and it roasts these peppers, fire roast them just like this as they're cooking. You just turn, rotate, turn, rotate. Just trying to char the whole thing. Any questions about this process? Vegetables you can and can't do with it?
There was a question about why you choose not to use iodized salt.
Yes. So iodized salt is very, very much refined, and they add iodine to it. So because the American diet does not have enough iodine in it. If you notice, a lot of Americans are low on iodine. So it's a way for them to supplement iodine into people's diet. That being said, the salt dissolves quickly, but because of the iodine, it is super, super, super salty. Also, I prefer unrefined salts. So the salts that we use on a day-to-day basis, I'm just gonna stick this in the bowl. This one's almost done here. The salts that we use on a day-to-day basis are refined so much that it's not really what we're used to having. So for example, I'm gonna show you guys. This, and use it to cover. There we go. So we're gonna let that sit for a few minutes. So this is kosher salt. This over here is sea salt. It's probably similar. And actually I have, let me go grab, I have some Korean sea salt here. Let me go grab that so you can see what that looks like. The grain on it is much bigger, much finer. I lied, it's not here anymore. But this will show you exactly what I'm talking about. So what makes Himalayan pink sea salt so amazing? People go, oh, I use Himalayan sea salt, it's healthier for you. The only difference between Himalayan salts and this salt is the amount of refinement that goes into it. So what they do is they actually bleach the salt of all of its minerals, and minerals are what gives the salt its color. So lava salt, it tastes very sulfuric, black salt, and that's because it comes from the beds of lava, right? Where the lava hits the sea and creates this black salt. In the Himalayas, there's minerals that make the salt very pink in color. So Himalayan salt is very pink. And all that coloring is the minerals, because they didn't bleach the salt to remove them. So the less refined we can use our salt, the better taste it's gonna have, and also the more control you'll have over the salinity of. So like this stuff it's refined so much that it has such a, this stuff is pretty coarse still, but usually like if you look at sea salt and how fine it is, you can't really control how much salt is going in your food, because one pinch is like, one pinch of refined like iodized salt is like probably this much kosher salt because of the crystal size, the grain size. That doesn't go there. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, that's great.
Perfect.
Two more questions.
Sure.
Can you blacken vegetables on an electric stove?
You need a flame to do it. Unfortunately, you can use a blowtorch. You can use
A
a
grill?
campfire outside, but you do need an open flame.
Okay.
But my example that we were just talking about, this is unrefined sugar. So what is that brown stuff in this unrefined sugar? It's the molasses. So we're used to seeing sugar as stark white. It's because they've removed all the minerals and molasses from the sugar and give us this white sugar. And then you'll notice these crystals are also much, much, much bigger. It's the same thing with salt. Next question.
Where do you recommend purchasing some of these more unique salts from?
You know, accessibility to this stuff has become pretty vast and wide open. You can get these salts even at Meijer, at a grocery store. You can find these salts. You can buy them online. You can buy them pretty much anywhere. If you want very specific, like for example, Korean sea salt, you're going to want to go to an Asian market. If you want, you know, you have to be careful because sometimes places will just take a regular salt crystal and dye it and call it Himalayan pink salt. So you want to make sure you're getting the actual authentic stuff. Lava salts, that black salt, you can find at any Asian, Indian grocer, like Southeast Asian grocery, like a Bengali place or an Indian grocery store. They almost all have the black salt. Kosher salt, sea salt, you can find just about everywhere now. They mass produce that stuff. And yeah, so.
I know Papa Joe Gourmet Marketplace carries it. I used to work there, and they have a lot of those black and pink and
Yep, specialty salts. Yep.
Yeah.
So here's our pepper. It's been charred. We'll let it sit in the bowl for a few minutes and steam. If I just wrap it with a towel and swipe, wrap it with a towel and swipe, you'll see all that charred stuff, in essence, just wipes right off because I steamed it and I allowed the skin to loosen from the pepper. See that? One of the things that drives me nuts as a chef is when I see people take these over to the sink and rinse them off. Because what are they rinsing off? All that smoky flavor that we just really worked really hard to get, right? So here's a smoked pepper, or this is a poblano pepper. So in Mexico, they'll actually stuff these with cheese, batter them and fry them. Chili rellenos, those of you, if you've ever heard of that or seen that on a menu, that's this pepper, this poblano pepper, roasted on an open flame, just like you saw. What they'll do is just do one slit, pull all the innards out, and then they will stuff it with cheese and batter it and fry it. That's chili rellenos. These are very, very mild peppers, these poblanos. They're not super spicy in any way, shape, or form. And but they have good flavor. They'll add a bit of heat to the dish, just a touch, not much at all. And they're absolutely delicious. So here's our pepper, number one. The other thing we want to do now that we have it to this point and it's roasted and diced, is you always want to season as you go. So I'm going to give it a little bit of salt. We'll set that aside. Now we'll take our red pepper. Same thing. Just wipe the skin away. And then I want to teach you guys how to roll cut a pepper. So a lot of people, there's multiple ways to cut a pepper. So if you take off the top, you can pop this stem out. All of this is usable. Most people throw out this portion of the pepper. Why? I don't know. It is very usable. You can use that. Then the next piece I'll do is I'll cut off the bottom. Again, this piece is very usable. Did you know that there's a difference between male and female bell peppers, and it's by 3 bumps or 4 bumps?
No.
Not as important on a bell pepper, but here's the cool thing. If you learn how to tell the sex difference between a eggplant, a male and a female eggplant, it is a complete game changer, because what makes eggplant bitter? The seeds inside of it, right? So which eggplant is going to have more reproductive seeds inside of it, the female or the male? Odds are you got the female, you're correct.
Female.
Exactly. So which eggplant is more bitter, a female or a male eggplant?
Female.
Female.
The female eggplant. So you want to try to find male eggplants. There's a joke in there, and I'm leaving it alone. But you want to try and find the male eggplants because they're going to be a lot less bitter. So when you go to make things like baba ganoush or a dip of some sort, you'll end up with a lot less bitter product in the end. So there's a tip for you. How can you tell the difference between a male and a female?
Right.
But what's the indicator on the eggplant then?
Yep,
Right.
I'll tell you guys here in just a second.
Okay,
So
sorry.
first, I want to make this small incision here, and that's going to open up the bell pepper. Then what we're going to do is what's called a roll cut. If I just take my knife and follow as I roll it open, here's my eggplant, or here's my bell pepper ready to dice. And this is my waist. And if you see, there's this really cool thing inside of here. It's another bell pepper that's growing inside. That's pretty cool. How lucky was that? So the indicator for male versus female eggplant is actually on the bottom. Just like on the bottom of the bell pepper, 3 buttons versus 4 buttons indicates male or female. If I have bell peppers, I want a female because it has more seeds that I can harvest and use to plant more bell peppers. But if I have eggplant, the bottom of the eggplant is round, right? And so at the bottom of this eggplant, there's this little button that connects. And if the button looks like a slit, it is a female. But if the button looks like a button, just a punt, just like a little mini divot, then it's a male. And a majority of the eggplants are actually females, not males. So you can get super selective about your eggplant. You can also remove some of the bitterness by salting it, and that'll leach those compounds out of the seeds. And so here's our bell pepper, all roll cut. And because I roll cut it, look at how quickly I made all these fajita strips, all these pieces that you can use for whatever you want to use them for, right? And then if I want to dice, I would do the same thing, just cut my strips, turn the strip sideways, cut across. And now I have roasted red bell pepper that's diced up and ready to go for whatever dish. So I'm gonna add those to the chili peppers or the poblano peppers, give them a pinch of salt. And that's done. Any questions about that process at all?
I have a question. So, excuse me, will we be getting these tips in the transcript that we receive from, or just the recipe? Because there are a lot of things that you're teaching us that I don't know how in the heck we're going to remember all of this.
Yeah.
Like she just said, the 3 or the 4 for the bell pepper, and then
You'll also get a copy of the video, a link to the copy of the video yourself. So you can go back and watch it as many times over as you want. I don't know
Cool.
if he's going to put actual notes in. I'll let him answer for it.
Yeah, I'm trying to capture as much as possible. So I did write that down. So
you should be using Otter. Okay, thank you.
I'm obsessed with the history of food, where things come from, because here's the thing. If I understand how something grows and why it grows the way that it does, I can then alter my dish accordingly. And the coolest thing is, like, I talk to people about this all the time. You know, we have one of the largest, we have the 2nd largest ecoclimate in the country. Why are farmers trying so hard to grow things that aren't naturally regional to this area? There's so many things like Saskatoon that are native to Michigan. We should be growing a ton of that. Why do we not eat Saskatoon? Why is there not Saskatoon jam on every menu in the city? Why is there not? Because we don't have access to it. And it's up to farmers to grow these things and give us access to these things. And then also to educate people, right? I grew this eggplant. Let me teach you more about eggplant. I grew this bell pepper. Let me teach you more about eggplant, bell peppers. Because the more you can educate your buyers, the more value added benefit you've given them, and the more likely I am to buy from you than I am from anyone else. Why? This farmer knows absolutely everything about their produce. They do an amazing job. The quality, we switched from cooking by quality to quantity. So now there's this whole thing when we look at seeds and how they're bought. There's this thing called tons per acre. So we look at seeds, and obviously they've been modified, but we look at these seeds and we go, how many tons of produce can I get per acre on this seed, versus saying, you know what, what's the quality of this tomato like? What does it taste like? How much acidity does it have? How much sweetness does it have? What's its growing time? I don't care how many, because obviously the more plants there are on a tree, more fruits there are on a tree, the less flavor each fruit has. Not only that, but we pick them super green, and then we ship them in these shipping containers across the country, and then we ripen them in ethylene chambers, so they don't actually get more nutrients and sugar. There's a reason why the oranges in Morocco are the best oranges I've ever had in my entire life. They sit on average an extra 3 to 4 weeks than they do here in America on the tree, still naturally growing, absorbing sugars, getting sweeter. And there's these really cool Native American farming tips, farming techniques that I've learned about recently from, they do this thing called iced, you know how we have iced wine where we let the grapes freeze and thaw and freeze and thaw, and every time they freeze and thaw, they get a little bit sweeter. Native Americans realized that they could do that with some crops. So things like, I see farmers now doing iced spinach, where they'll let the spinach freeze and thaw, freeze and thaw, freeze and thaw. And the spinach, if you take a sucrometer to it and test how much sugar is in the spinach, it is so sweet that I've never tasted anything like that in my entire life. It's absolutely amazing to try. So farming techniques, the way that we grow our food, the seeds that we use. Alexa, dismiss timer. All these things play a huge role in, all these things play a huge role in how our food comes out. So we're just gonna take a look at these. Still a little firm. We're gonna give those some more time. Alexa, set a timer for 20 minutes. All right. And next up, we're gonna make some charmoula. So charmoula is an herby green sauce used in Morocco, and it's, every country has their version of, it's funny, we look at how old the diaspora of cooking is in Africa, and it's some of the oldest cooking in the world, and every country in the world has figured out how to grind herbs and grind seeds, spices, and to create these sauces that are completely unique to their region. So in Argentina, we have chimichurri, right? In Italy, we have pesto. In Morocco, we have charmoula. And it's actually super simple, easy to make, and it's absolutely amazing. So what I'm going to do here is very simple. Cumin, I'm just gonna give about a teaspoon's worth. Coriander, I'm gonna give about a teaspoon's worth. And then in a mortar and pestle, I'm not gonna grind these. I just kind of wanna crush them up a little bit and open up and give them flavor. We're so used to just refined food in America that we don't get to, I wish you guys could smell this. We don't get to enjoy chunks of cumin or chunks of coriander. So coriander is super citrusy. It's also the seed for, does anybody know what plant coriander is the seed for?
Cilantro.
Exactly. So it's super citrusy, but it tastes completely different than a grown cilantro, correct? So super unique, super delicious. We're just gonna dump those in a food processor. You could do this whole process in a mortar and pestle if you want. You can do it in a blender. You can do it in a food processor. I like mine a little chunky, so I try to do it in a food processor. That way I can control and kind of go little by little, little by little. So we're gonna do those now. So the ingredients that are going into this is cumin and coriander that you just saw. Right here, I have 2 bunches of cilantro. So I'm just gonna take these leaves off. That's going in. I have 2 bunches of parsley. I'm gonna take those leaves off. They're gonna go right there. 3 scallions. I'm gonna grab a knife and just cut this up into little pieces here. Okay,
How much coriander and cumin? Like roughly?
a teaspoon of each. So here's something interesting. The stems from our parsley and cilantro are very usable for many things. Cilantro stems taste just like cilantro leaves. So a lot of taco places will use the entire thing, stem, leaf, and all. Parsley stems, however, have a little bit of bitterness to them. So you'll use them in broths, stocks, soups, sauces. I use them in brines. I have 2 garlic cloves here, so we'll throw those in. And then jalapeno. If you like your stuff super spicy, then you just leave the seeds and veins in. If you don't want it super spicy, then you just take them out. I like spicy, so I'm just gonna leave it in. So 1 jalapeno chopped up. And then the final secret ingredient for this, there's 2. It's funny, they grow in Morocco Meyer lemons out the wazoo. That is their lemon of choice. Here's the funny thing about Moroccan food. They are obsessed with fermented things. Fermented and cured food. They don't use lemon juice like the rest of Africa or the rest of the Middle East, or a lot of people will use the lemon juice, right? In Morocco, they take these Meyer lemons and they just cure them in salt. And so what you end up having is what's called a preserved lemon. So these are super easy to make at home. You can actually just cut a lemon into like this. And you cut them so that it opens up, but not all the way to the core. You'll pack it with salt. You'll pack them in a jar. You'll pack it tight as you can. And then you'll pour lemon juice over top of it. You set it on the shelf of a cupboard and you let it sit for 3-4 months. The longer they sit, I mean, these are a couple of years old now. The longer it sits, the better off it gets. Then when you go to use it, you just take a segment like this. We're going to use 1/4 of a lemon for this recipe. And you're going to take the flesh out of the lemon. This stuff is super salty. It has very little lemon flavor left in it. It's just super salty, very umami rich. I'll use this to salt stocks, soups, etc. Most people just throw them away. This is actually what you're looking for. This is what people eat. It's the flesh of the preserved lemon. So we're going to go ahead and process this into our charmola as well. So I did about 1/4 of a preserved lemon. Now you can always add more of this, but you can never take it away, right? So this stuff is salty, really salty. So make sure you add little by little and play as you go, okay? So we're gonna do about 1/4 of a lemon there. And lastly, because they don't use lemons for acidity, they're very big on vinegar in Morocco. So this is a little red wine vinegar. I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of this, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take all this that we just cut up and got ready over to the food processor. Once we have all this in there, I'm going to take you guys over there. This is vegetable oil. This is what we use to emulsify. You can use olive oil, whatever you want to do. That's what we'll use to emulsify this sauce. So I'm going to move you guys over with me again. So what I do for this is just short pulses. I don't want a full puree. I like mine a little chunky. right? So in order to do that, I'm just gonna pulse until I see a consistency that I like. And once I have that consistency that I like right here, this is where I'll start to add my vinegar. So I'm going to go ahead and give it roughly 2 tablespoons of vinegar. 1, 2. Have you guys ever used your vinegar and there's this slimy little thing that slides out of the bottle and into whatever you're trying to cook? Yes, no, maybe so.
Yes, for sure.
Yes,
Do you guys know what that is?
Mrs. Braggs, that's what. it's in
Yep,
there.
it's actually the
It's called the
mother of-
mother.
It's the mother of vinegar, right? So it's a SCOBY. You can actually take that mother and add it to apple juice, and it will make apple cider vinegar for you. It'll eat all the sugars, it'll turn it into alcohol, and then it will turn into vinegar. It's the same thing that makes kombucha, right? It's a SCOBY. It's a mother of vinegar. It takes green tea and sugar and turns it into vinegar. So that stuff that people go, oh, my vinegar went bad, I got to throw it out. No, that's actually just the fermentation process kicking back up in your vinegar. So now that I have my 2 tablespoons of vinegar in there, I'm just going to go ahead and give it a little bit of oil. I'll process it with a little bit of oil. I normally do this while it's running. I can't do that one-handed, so bear with me. And there, I can hear that this is exactly the texture I'm looking for. So how much did I add? I added about 1/4 cup to a 1/2 cup. It depends on the consistency you're looking for. This is exactly what I like. It's just, it'll add a little bit of binder, a little bit of fattiness and richness to it. Now's when you can taste it and adjust the seasoning as needed. And I promise you make this stuff, you'll put it on everything. It's really good with fried fish, really good with chicken. I mean, there's nothing it's not good with. I swear to you, stuff is amazing. What oil do I use? So you have 2 types of oil. You have what's called a neutral oil. A neutral oil is an oil that, sorry. All right. A neutral oil is an oil that doesn't have any flavor. Canola oil, soybean oil, vegetable oil. Those are all neutral oils.
Mhm.
A non-neutral oil has its own flavor that it brings to the party. Those oils are like your walnut oil, your almond oil, your olive oil. All those oils, they have flavors to them. It's not just a straight oil with no flavoring in it. Mustard oil is one of my favorite oils to cook with. It'll add this richness, this like subtle mustard flavor to anything you cook. Like fry your fish in mustard oil, it'll change your life. So when we make things like sauces and emulsions like mayonnaise, we want to use a neutral oil. If you ever made mayonnaise with olive oil, it tastes horrible, right? It tastes really bitter. And that's because of the flavors that they bring to the party. And each one has its own unique special thing that it can do for a dish. Some oils, here's another piece, is that oils have different, where do you buy mustard oil? You can buy them at any Indian market, any Asian grocer. A lot of Asians use mustard oil in cooking. Different oils have different smoke points. What does that mean? The more heat that I add to it, when an oil starts to smoke, that means it's about to catch flames. It's about to burst into flames. So that's why we fry in canola oil, soybean oil, because they have really high smoking points. Whereas butter burns really easily, right? If you put butter in a pan and it burns. But if I take butter and I clarify it and I take all those milk solids out, the smoke point jumps all the way up to 400 degrees up here with these, which is why you see a lot of Asians and Middle Easterns cook with this thing called ghee. Ghee is clarified butter, okay? And so the smoking point completely changes based on the type of oil. So you also want to take into consideration, how am I using this oil and what is its intended purpose for this dish? So if I want a finishing oil, like I really want this nuttiness at the end, you could use a brown butter, or you want to have a walnut oil or an almond oil. If you want something to just be clean and flavored, you just want to use a neutral oil, like your vegetable oil, canola oil, et cetera, et cetera. So those are your two types of oils. Those are the ones we use, and that's how we use them. Cool. All right. So our charmoula is done. We've now charred vegetables. We have roasted vegetables. Let's go over sauteing a vegetable. Let me grab the cutting board and I'll be right back. All right. So, what is sauteing? Saute literally means to jump. So we want our pan so hot that the moisture in the vegetable causes the vegetable to jump out of the pan. Okay. So what I'm doing now is I should probably move this over so you guys can see. Let's flip this around. All right, can you guys see my cutting board right there?
Yep.
Awesome. So what I'm doing now is I have a squash and a zucchini, and very simply, I'm just going to cut this into strips. And then I'm going to cut this into dices. And again, we want these roughly all the same size. At the restaurant, we want to create different textures and visuals. I like these super small because of the way we're doing our couscous today. At the restaurant, I'll show you how we cut these. At the restaurant, I'll take this half. I'll take this half and half. And we cut these triangles. And these are the sauteed squash and zucchini that we put into the couscous at the restaurant. But for today's purposes, I like the thought of a very small dice that will mix well with the poblanos, the bell peppers. I just want this consistent small cut to flavor our couscous. So again, zucchini, same thing. Just gonna take it in half, cut into some planks, and dice it up. So our zucchini and squash is roughly the same size. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to saute this. So again, in order to saute, what we need is very, very, very high heat. So one of the biggest mistakes people make when they saute is we want to see something or saute it. We don't want to mess with it. Let the pan do the work. It's really hot for a reason. One of my biggest things is when people overcrowd a pan with mushrooms, and now we get no color on the mushrooms, and now they start to leach their liquid into the pan, and all of a sudden we're making boiled mushrooms that have no texture, no flavor to them whatsoever. And that's because we're putting too many in the pan at once. So you'll see these are cut really small and fine. I'm going to let my pan get really hot, and then I'm going to show you how you can test to see if your saute pan is ready to cook. So we talked about saute means to jump, right? That's the literal translation. If I drip some water in, it's sizzling, but it's not jumping. So it's not quite there yet. And you'll see when it is there, what happens is, I'll give it like 10 seconds and it should be there. The other piece is, keep in mind, I'm using a restaurant burner. This is way, way, way hotter than anything you can get at your house, okay? So your pan is going to take a lot longer than this to heat up to this temperature. And now you can kind of, I don't know if you guys can see this, if I can zoom in here. Let me show you. You'll see, can you guys see the pan jumping?
The camera is being a little grainy because it's moving around a lot, but I think the concept is there.
So you can see the water drop jumping, right?
Right.
Now it's ready to saute. Now you see how the pan is smoking? That means the oil that's in it has reached its smoke point. That means the pan is definitely hot enough to saute. So I'm just gonna give it a touch of oil, just a little bit. It's gonna help us get some color on these squash and zucchini. I'm gonna shut you guys down for a second. I'm just gonna put this squash and zucchini in. Do you hear that sizzle? I don't know if you guys can hear it, but if you don't hear sizzle, if you don't see sizzle, you went in way too early. Sizzling is good, okay? So we're just gonna saute these, and what I'm trying to do is get some really good color on them. So the other thing that beginner cooks will do is they'll stir this as it's cooking. But every time you stir it, you're stopping it from getting its color. It's not, you're stopping it from searing. So just don't touch it. Let it sit. It'll sit for a good 45 seconds, a minute, depending on how hot your pan is. And that's when you can go ahead and make adjustments. So I'm just gonna add some salt and pepper to this. Again, season in layers, season as you go. Don't try and season everything at the end. So it'll be really hard to infuse salt into individual items if you don't season as you go. Who's coming over for dinner in a little bit?
Nice.
This is a nonstick pan. You don't have to use a nonstick pan. You can use whatever pan you want. But you'll see how I got a nice sear on that squash and zucchini. And that's called the Maillard reaction. That caramelization, just like it does on sugar, what it does to vegetables and meat is it creates this other flavor that is absolutely extraordinary. So I also like a little texture on my vegetables. I hate vegetables that have been cooked to mush. So this high heat technique allows me to get some color on the outside of it. And because we cut it so small, it's going to continue to cook even after it comes out of this pan. So here I have my color. It still has a little bit of bite to it. It's not super soft. And I'm just going to go ahead and add this to our roasted peppers and from earlier. So now we have the vegetable base for making a couscous that's going to be out of this world. Okay. So next up, we're going to take this pan and we're going to make what's called Bakoula. So Bakoula does not require the pan to be as hot. Alexa, dismiss timer. So that means it's time to check on these bad boys. And they are done. So I'm going to turn this oven off. Let me get a towel. I'll be right back so I can pull this out. And then we'll go from there. Give me 1 sec, guys.
Okay.
All right. So look at this beautiful color that we've gotten onto our roasted butternut squash. We're just gonna let it sit here and cool until it's cool enough for us to touch. And then we'll be able to peel them, dice them up, and mix them into these vegetables. And that'll be the vegetable medley that we can fold into our couscous when we're done. So you see in here, we have some fire roasted, some sauteed, and some oven roasted vegetables. A bunch of different cooking techniques, all used in one dish. Any questions?
Let's see here.
How quick these cook is going to be completely dependent upon how thick I cut them. The thicker I cut them, the longer they will take to roast. The thinner I cut them, the smaller I cut them, the quicker they will roast in the oven. You can actually fine dice these really small and pan saute them if you want to. And they'll cook up in a saute pan really quick. You don't even have to go into an oven. But this is my preferred method because I get all this. See if I can grab this. It's too hot. You get all this browning and caramelization throughout it, and this stuff is absolutely just packed with flavor. It's a little too hot, so I'm not going to mess with it more than that. But to peel these is also super easy as well once they cool off. As a matter of fact, let me just show you. So here's a piece. I can just grab the skin. It's a little hot still.
but the skin, you can see, if I wait for it to cool, peels right off this thing. And now I have a piece that's fully peeled. I can eat it like this. I can roast it. I mean, I can puree it. For us, we're just gonna, this might be a little bit too overdone for the application that we're looking for.
Hey, babe, I'm on a Zoom call. Can I call you back? Okay, babe, love you.
I love you too.
Oh.
So butternut squash, super, super easy to do. The only technique I'm not using today is frying, just because I think we all know how to fry stuff. That's what the Midwest is known for, is our ability to fry things. I don't think we need a tutorial on how to fry things. So there's this term in French, and that term is mise en place. Mise en place means everything in its place. It means when you go to cook, make sure you have everything that you need to make that dish. And mise en place is most important actually with Chinese cuisine. Have you ever watched someone cook with a wok, a really skilled wok cook? They cook, this is one of the coolest things that I like to tell people. They go, well, Chinese food, it happens quickly, so it's cheap. What you're paying for is not the speed in which you can cook the dish. What you're paying for is the thousands of years they took to perfect being able to cook the dish that fast. And so one of my biggest pet peeves is going to Olive Garden and we'll pay $30 for a fettuccine Alfredo, but then we'll complain about a $15 lo mein on a Chinese menu when the Chinese created noodles. So this dish is a braised greens dish. It's funny, there's so many braised green dishes that come out of Africa. And this is just another one of those dishes. So in this bowl, I just have a quarter of a preserved lemon that I minced up. I'm adding 3 tablespoons of olives. That's 2. That's 3. Okay. So 3 tablespoons of olives, a quarter of a preserved lemon diced up. Over here, I have shallot minced up, garlic, of a daikon radish. Is, let's say, parsley and cilantro.
Hey, chef,
Over here,
excuse me, chef.
yes.
Could you, the last 4 or 5 things you said, you were cut off for a second. So you said, I got the preserved lemon, the green olives, and that you had the garlic and onions there.
Yep, I'll go over it all real quick again. Just give me 1 sec to get it all set up, and then I'll go over the whole thing before I start.
Sounds good.
Yep. This is our cumin, and this is salt and pepper. Okay. So mise en place means everything in its place. Meaning when I start to cook this dish, this whole dish comes together very quickly in a matter of minutes. And if I don't have everything that I need to cook it, I failed before I even started. So over here, I have ground cumin, and this is just a mixture of salt and pepper. So these you can use to flavor as you go with just pinches. Salt and pepper, I'm going to use very, very minimally because we have these briny olives and we have this preserved lemon, which is super salty. So the more salt I add, by the time when I go to cook these olives and preserved lemon, by the time I go to cook them, over time they'll leach more and more salt out into the dish. And if I use too much, along with this salt, if I season it perfectly and then I let it sit for 15 minutes and I come back to it, it will be too salty because these are going to continue to leach their salty brines and their salty into the dish. Okay, so cumin, salt and pepper. This is 3 tablespoons of olives and a quarter of a preserved lemon minced up. This was 1 shallot that we diced up together and 3 cloves of garlic. This is the leaves off of 1 daikon radish that you saw shred up. And this is about, let's say, you know, a quarter of a bunch of parsley and a quarter of a bunch of cilantro leaves. And to finish this for acidity, some just regular old white vinegar. Okay? Did we get it all this time?
Yep.
Awesome. So I'm going to heat up my pan and give it a touch of what do I do with my oil? Oh, it's up here. Give it a touch of oil, just a touch. And I'm not trying to saute now, I'm trying to sweat. What does that mean? I want them in the oil before the pan gets too hot. Because I'm not trying to add color to these, I'm just trying to get their flavor out. Okay, so we don't want color. You'll notice my flame is super low in here. I don't even know if you can see it, it's that small. I'm just trying to sweat the garlic and the onions, make them translucent, and help them give their flavor to what's going to end up being this preserved lemon sauce at the bottom. Okay? So to this, I'm going to add a pinch of cumin. You see how little that is, and that's going to... The reason I'm adding the cumin to the oil is there are some spices that are oil soluble and some spices that are water soluble. Cumin is an oil soluble seasoning. So when I add my seasonings to the oil, instead of adding it at the end, the oils really extract that cumin flavor into the dish, okay? So now that I have this sweated, I'm gonna crank the heat on high and I'm gonna dump in my greens. And now I wanna fold that onion cumin mixture into my greens, yes? And you can do this with spinach, with baby kale, with kale itself, collard greens, whatever greens you want to use, you can use for this, okay? Now to speed this process up along a little bit without burning in everything, this is just water. I'm gonna give it a touch of water, and that steam is gonna help wilt these greens down. Notice I didn't add too much. I'm not trying to boil the greens for a long period of time. These are pretty tender greens. I just want to add enough water to help steam these greens down and break them up a little bit. So as they cook, and I see they're starting to look, you see how they shrunk inside? They were trying to come out of the pan earlier. I'm gonna add my parsley and cilantro. Mix those in and let those steam and cook down a little bit. From here, we'll add our lemons and preserved olives. Or, I mean, our preserved lemons and olives. Oh.
Chef, you there? We lost you. Omar, can you hear us?
He left the participants list.
He's probably trying to log back in.
This is a fabulous class, Keto.
Yeah, he's great.
This is great.
Yeah, make sure he sees the chat. We love it.
Yes, he can stay on for 2 hours, 2 or 3 hours.
That's why I wrote you, I know what to grow, even though I won't be able to differentiate until they come out, the eggplant and green peppers, but now I know what to look for.
Right. Great. What are you gonna grow, Marguerite?
Well, I grow spinach,
Yeah.
kale, collards, but I don't always grow the green peppers and eggplants. But a friend has a farm, so I'm gonna try to grow the fruit
I
that
want to do that
Keto mentioned.
too. Yeah, that sucker too.
Yeah,
I wanna get
but
some of
you
that.
can get those. You can get farm to freezer in
Did you
number
guys
of
miss
places,
me?
including Myers. She's back.
Yeah.
Bye.
Oh, you're back.
Yeah,
There you
sorry,
are.
my phone died. I didn't realize my battery, like, we were at 60% when we started.
Yeah.
So I thought we'd
Zoom.
be okay. No worries. So let's,
Okay. No worries. Yeah, no problem.
so as the water evaporated, right? All I did was give it 2 tablespoons of vinegar, and that was it. That's the whole dish. And so from here, what you want to do is just taste it and finish. I added maybe 2 to 3 tablespoons of vinegar. And again, you do it to taste, however much taste you want. Some people like it more tart, some people like it more sweet, matter of preference. And so if you could smell this right now, you just smell this fragrance of garlic and cumin, preserved lemon. Your greens have wilted down.
Mm.
You have a little bit of herbs, but the herbs are cooked. So for me, I just want to touch more acidity. I'm going to give it a couple more tablespoons of vinegar. Here's the thing. So I waited till the water was almost completely evaporated. That's when I added my vinegar because I want the vinegar to soak in. But here's what most people don't realize about vinegar is the longer you cook it, the less strength it has. It's not like lemon juice where it won't cook out. Vinegar will actually, the acidity, it comes from a bacteria, right? And so as you cook that acid from vinegar, it dissipates and it doesn't exist anymore. So basically when I added my vinegar to this pan, the pan was so hot, I cooked off the vinegar and it doesn't have any tartness left to it. So I'm gonna give it just one more splash of vinegar. And I'm only grabbing the red wine vinegar because it's what's close to me, right? If I wanted a sweeter collard, I could grab some of that pickling liquid from what we used earlier, right? It has a bunch of vinegar in it. I could season it with that. The salt level to me is perfect, knowing that I'm gonna get these salty, briny bites from our olives. And then our preserved lemon also is in there, leaching some more salt. So I wanna show you guys. That is her right there. Super simple. Now, do you remember when I first put the greens in, how they were overflowing out of the pan?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then look how little we're left with when we're done. Same thing when you cook spinach, same thing when you cook any of these greens, collards, kale, they all cook down a lot. Like their volume just disappears into nothingness. So this is packed with nutrition in a small bowl. Make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. So that is Bakoula. And the last thing we're gonna go ahead.
A couple of questions.
Yeah.
On sourcing some of these ingredients, like preserved lemons, do you have a recommendation? I think I've seen them at Super Greenland or like some of the
Super Greenland has a lot of Middle Eastern places. Not a lot of Middle Eastern places, but Super Greenland definitely has them. That's where that jar that you saw is. So this came from Super Greenland. Believe it or not, Meyer actually carries preserved lemons now from Mina, which is a company that makes harissa, which is a North African hot sauce from Morocco and Tunisia and Algeria. So yeah, you can get preserved lemons at a lot of grocery stores now. Again, they're super easy to make. Lemon, salt, pack them in a jar, cover them with lemon juice, let them sit. The longer they sit, the better they get. You'll know they're ready to use when the rind of the lemon, when you can start peeling apart the rind of the lemon very easily, it'll just break apart. Then you know it's ready to use. If the skin of the lemon is still tough, just let it sit longer.
Yeah.
Minimum 90 days. I let mine sit for at least 6 months before I touch them.
Okay. And then looks like you were using green olives, pitted green olives. Did you have a particular?
These are pitted green olives. At the restaurant, we use sliced olives that don't have pits in them because we're afraid people will bite into them and break a tooth.
Yeah.
What do you use the leftover lemon for? Lemonade. That's what you do when life gives you lemons, right? The other thing is, at the restaurant, when we juice our lemons for our lemonades, we have all these rinds left. We actually put them in a giant jar. We'll sterilize them, obviously, and you want to use non-waxed lemons. If they're waxed, they're not going to cure. Unwaxed lemons, we'll after we juice them for our lemonade, we'll put them in a jar, and then we make a brine that's at least 10% salt. We'll add a little sugar, and then we'll add acidity via citric acid, and we'll pour it over top of these freshly squeezed lemons. We'll shut the jar up, and we throw it on the shelves, and we give it 6 months, and we actually have preserved lemons when we're done. And we don't have to scoop out the flesh or anything because it already came out.
Nice. What about, and then you used the radish tops for the greens. What other greens would you?
You can use any greens. At the restaurant, we use kale, collards, spinach, mustard greens, whatever greens you want to use. It's a greens dish. Like it's a very basic, simple. So if you use kale, for example, use baby kale, use the whole thing. If you're going to use adult kale, you want to get the stem off and use only the leaf. Because again, the stem is thick and tough and fibrous. And you can do things like
I can send it.
pickling the stem. And it's freaking delicious. Go ahead.
Oh, I think somebody just came off mute mic for a second. Okay, I think that's
it for questions.
No.
maybe at the end we'll. Oh, yeah, maybe at the end there were some questions about the restaurant, but maybe at the end you could talk about hours when the restaurant's open and the menu kind of stuff.
We have one last dish to make before we can put it all together for dinner. This is called couscous. All the couscous we get in America is instant couscous. It's not the OG couscous that's hand rolled. This thing is the ultimate. It's actually a pasta. It's not a grain. Most people don't know that. It's semolina wheat that's rolled into these little pasta spheres. And the stuff is amazing. And one of the
What does LG mean, chef?
All the chicken's
Sorry?
gonna be a different basket 'cause
You
weighs
said
different. So
LG?
So you're gonna put in
It's the LG couscous.
OG. This is like old gangster couscous is the old hand rolled. So when you cook old couscous, the way that you cook it, it goes in a steamer basket. You have to steam it for an hour. Then you have to pull it out and fluff it, which you're going to see us do with this. Then you have to steam it for another hour, pull it out and fluff it. And you have to steam it for another hour, pull it out and fluff it. And then you can serve it to your guests. All the couscous we get in America is what's called instant couscous. It can be cooked in a matter of minutes. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. The problem is people still don't cook it the right way. So we're going to teach you some tips and tricks to get super, for example, in Asian cookery, they talk about every grain of rice should be separate, right? No two grains should be stuck together. That's how you know someone is really, really good at cooking rice. Couscous holds a very dear place in my heart. There's a story. We talked about how people don't really have access to food in a lot of parts of Africa, and there's a lot of poverty, right? There's a thing with couscous. For every single.
Excuse me, guys. Could you mute, please?
All right. Cool.
Yeah.
For every single grain, I don't know if you can see this on my finger. That is 1 grain of couscous. For every single grain of couscous I eat, I get one step closer to heaven. For every grain of couscous that I feed someone else, I get 2 steps closer to heaven. So on Fridays, it's the big day where people go to the mosque and do their prayers. People will take trays and trays of couscous to the mosque so that they can feed people who are needy, in hopes that they just get 2 steps closer to heaven. And this is the ultimate thought of community, which is one of our core values at the restaurant. You know, throughout the pandemic, I served 150,000 meals to people in need, frontline workers, homeless people, industry
Awesome.
workers who were displaced. That is a part of community. That's who we are. And I don't do it for praise. I don't do it for recognition. But at its core, at its essence, it's how we grow. And taking care of community is something that has always been ingrained in me since I was a child. And I think that that's something that's lost on a lot of people. Is when you look at, sorry, I might start crying here in a second.
Don't
When
have
you
me
look at-
crying too, Omar.
when you look at the history of when you look at the history of African people, history books are always written by the winners of a war, never by the losers, right? And so we have this beautiful history that's passed down as oral history, right? There are no books that tell the history of a certain people, certain villages, certain groups. How is that history passed down from generation to generation to generation, from the elders through stories, right? And those stories are transferred from generation to generation to generation. And to hear those stories, there's a lady who lives around the corner from me, from the restaurant. One of the most amazing people you'll ever meet in your entire life. She came in one time. She goes, "Oh, hi, I'm Miss Calloway." I'm like, that sounds so familiar. Why does this lady's name sound so familiar to me? She grew up in this neighborhood her whole life. This restaurant used to be a part of this strip mall, this automotive strip mall. Like, they used to be a manufacturer. This was the offices for this automotive manufacturer. So this guy bought this building, this portion of the property, and turned it into one of Detroit's first Coney Islands. I didn't know that. This was one of Detroit's first Coney Islands. And it's funny, when we went to remodel the building, we stripped off the facade. We saw the signage on the building that said hot dog, chips, Coney's, French fries. And that was super cool to see. I was like, "Oh, yeah, so you've been eating here that long?" She goes, "Well, me and my late husband bought the building after him, and we turned it into Calloway's Barbecue." So this building was Calloway's Barbecue for years and years and years. And then finally, they sold the building to the O'Quinns, right? And the O'Quinns turned this into O'Quinn's Barbecue and Shrimp. O'Quinn's Barbecue and Shrimp used to be, apparently from what it was explained to me, a staple in fried shrimp in Detroit. And Mr. O'Quinn did something that was absolutely ingenious. He discovered what was called shrimp tempura, a Japanese style fried shrimp. But 10 years ago, all takeout Asian food was Chinese food, right? Oh, you got Chinese takeout. No, this is sushi. This is Japanese. No, this is pho. This is Vietnamese. We didn't understand. It was all Chinese takeout to us. And so what he did was extremely intelligent. He took this tempura batter and he fried his shrimp, and he was serving fried shrimp tempura. But people didn't know any better. To them, it was just fried shrimp. This is amazing. And so that story and that history of this building and this business and how it came to me is something that I never would have learned if it wasn't for that oral history that was passed down from generation to generation to generation, that hopefully I'll be able to tell the next owners of this building, or that I hope that this restaurant will be here for generations, and the next owner will be able to take that history and transfer it on to the next person. But that is the beauty of food, as it all tells a story, right? And the history of food is what's the easiest way to break barriers with somebody else?
Sit down to dinner, to lunch.
Mm-hmm. What's the greatest way to humanize someone? Like, oh my God, Moroccans in Africa, they're this, that, and the other. And then you have their food and like, this is freaking delicious. Really? And so now it becomes more normal. And when somebody says an African from Morocco is just this second-rate blah, 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 you can go, you know what? I know this Moroccan guy up the street. He's such a super nice guy. And we lead by example, and through our community, and through taking care of our community and being leaders. And people go, no, I know this Moroccan guy. He's really freaking cool. His food is amazing. And all the stuff you're saying isn't true. That's how we humanize ourselves to other people. That's how we break barriers, through the food we cook. So before we run out of time, because I know we're getting there, couscous. Couscous is the ultimate flavor vessel. It will carry whatever flavor you give it, okay? So this is 2 cups of couscous. I can add 2 cups of any liquid to this, and it will take that flavor. So if I'm making a chicken dish, what am I gonna use?
Chicken broth.
Chicken broth, exactly. If I'm making a fish dish, I'll use a fish broth. Here's a cool thing you can do. Turn it into a dessert. Take some hot apple cider, pour it over top, fluff your couscous. It'll have this apple cider sugary deliciousness to it. Serve it with some sauteed apples, and now you have a sweet couscous. Couscous is the most versatile thing on the face of the planet. We're serving with vegetables today. I've seen it served with brown butter and preserved lemons. It's one of my favorite ways to eat it. I've seen it served with just about any way you want to serve it. So I'm going to put these 2 cups of couscous in a bowl. So for every 1 quart of couscous, I'll use, a quart is 4 cups. So for every 4 cups of couscous, I'll do 5 cups of whatever liquid I'm trying to steep it in, okay? So this was 2 cups. I'm gonna give it 2.5 cups roughly of liquid. I'm gonna put it on the stove and bring it up to a boil. Then we're gonna pour it over top of this couscous and wrap it up. I'm gonna ask a couple questions. I'll answer a couple questions, and then we'll come back and finish the couscous. So give me 1 sec to get this water rolling, and then I'll answer some questions. Okay. So I got roughly 2.5 cups of water on the stove. Now I could, again, you can use whatever liquid you want. It's basically just gonna infuse this couscous with flavor. Remember to season your water. If you want to use vegetable broth for a vegetable dish, you can use a vegetable broth. Again, season as you go. So I'm just gonna add a pinch of salt and pepper to this. And then I added a pinch of cumin just to help fortify that cumin flavor throughout our dish. You could add beans to this. You could add whatever you wanted. It's amazing how much people want to be vegan and be healthier, and how much African food, or what people call Mediterranean food, lends itself so well to that type of eating. Because again, we don't have access to meat the same way Americans do. Our plates are not built around protein. Like there's no center of the plate giant steak to every meal, right? That's a luxury. So lay the questions on me. Let's answer some questions while we wait.
Can you talk the couscous? So you were saying this is different than instant couscous.
No, this is instant couscous.
This is the instant.
So, the non-instant couscous has to be put in what's called the couscousier. It's basically, it looks like a pasta strainer, and then the bottom pot you'll put your water, and then they put in aromatics, bay leaves, cloves, cardamom, coriander, and the steam will have the aroma of those spices, and it penetrates and slowly hydrates the couscous. If we do it the way we do it is we add our hot liquid directly to this couscous. What we're doing is drawing the starches out really quick, so it ends up being really clumpy, really hard to eat couscous. The old way, you're just perfuming your couscous as you go, and then fluffing it as you go. And again, it's a 3-hour cook for 1 pot of couscous. So you can see how much labor and love goes into just making one dish. Versus our way is what's called instant couscous. We pour our liquid right over top. But I'm going to teach you how to get it super fluffy today, so that it's not like the couscous that everybody else tries feeding you. The cool thing about couscous is it can be eaten cold, it can be eaten hot. This whole dish, you can put it together, put it in the refrigerator and eat it as a cold meal. You can eat it warm, you can eat it hot. It's completely up to you. I don't know if you've ever eaten, when you finish making this Bakoula, when you make it at home, want you to taste the olives while they're warm. There's something special about a warm olive in your mouth. I don't know why. It's just, it's delicious because we're so used to eating olives cold. We never eat them warm.
On pizza.
Yep. Oh yeah, there you go, on pizza. But yeah, so what other questions we got?
Chef Omar?
Yes.
I heard you say earlier that Mediterranean or Morocco was where pasta began. I always attributed that to Italians, and I agree so wholeheartedly with you that food brings us all together. I'm going to the Chinese food restaurant when I leave on Jefferson because there's a Chinese food lady. She makes the best Chinese food. She's very mean, but her food is so good. She's always mad, but
So pasta originated.
it's been there for years on Jefferson.
Yeah. So pasta originated in China. There's over 300 types of pasta in China. And so here's the thing. What people don't know is Morocco is this is what I love about Moroccan food. Why I chose to cook Moroccan food is I'm actually half Palestinian and half Egyptian, right? So I'm half African, half Middle Eastern. And I'm a French trained chef. So when I looked at what kind of food do I want to cook, I thought, man, if I cook Palestinian food, which is the food that I absolutely love, that I grew up with, it's not going to be about the food. It's going to be about the politics, the religion, the this, that, and the other. And that's not, I want people to understand food and love through food. So one night I woke up in dead of sleep and thought to myself, wait a minute, Detroit is a French city. I'm a French trained chef. Morocco was occupied by the French, but they make all the food in the Middle East. And I Google it and there's no Moroccan restaurants. And my wife's like, what are you doing? Turn off your phone. I'm like, there's no Moroccan restaurants. And she's like, go to bed. What are you doing? I'm like, babe, there's no Moroccan restaurants. So there were no Moroccan restaurants here. The cool thing about Morocco is they were occupied by the French. Okay, my water is boiling. I'm just gonna pour it over top of my couscous. And you'll see the amount of water there is to couscous. It looks like there's way too much water in there, right? But this couscous is going to absorb all this water, and then I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. So, Morocco was occupied by the French, the Spanish, the Turks, the Moors, the Persians, the Egyptians. And so they were this huge melting pot of people. And so the other cool thing is Morocco was the end of what was known as Silk Road. So while these Europeans were trying to find a way to get to India, they were trying to find a shortcut. They ended up finding America instead, right? But Arabs, being the ultimate businessmen, said, you know what? We're right next to Asia. Why don't we just go get the spices and we'll sell to the Europeans at a profit? And wholesaling was born. So they would go down to India. They'd get all the spices. They travel back up through the deserts, up through North Africa, and Morocco, where the Straits of Gibraltar are, you can actually see Spain. So the Spanish, the French, all the Europeans would come to the port in the Straits of Gibraltar and Morocco, and the Arabs would sell them spices. So Morocco became this huge just mixture of all these different people and what happens when the cuisines come to your country? You start to adapt them and take them and turn them into your own, right? The world's first Ninja 5-in-1 foodie pressure cooker. Does anyone know what that is?
Ninja Chinese.
No, in Morocco. So there's these.
Really?
You have to remember so not only is there the cooking techniques of Asia, but there are these tribes, these nomadic tribes that were roaming Africa, right? And they created these things called tagines. And a tagine is a pot with a really heavy dome lid that's shaped as a cone. So this is your original all-in-one foodie, because what would happen is you'd set the bottom of the pot onto coals or onto a fire, and you start to saute in it and cook in it. And then you'd pour your liquid in here, your braising liquid, and you put your hunk of meat in, and then you put the lid on top. So this lid is conical and it's really heavy. So it does a couple things. A, your meat is braising inside of the bottom of this tagine, right? Because the liquid's simmering, and B, now it's starting to steam inside of here. So now we're steaming our meat as it cooks.
Mm.
Next, because the lid is so heavy, it's created pressure. And so now we're pressure cooking this meat. And lastly, this dome is built like a cone. So all the steam rises to the top of this cone, condenses back into liquid on this divot in the lid, and drips back down and bastes the meat while it's cooking. So you have all these cooking techniques in one little cooking vessel that's used by these nomadic people that are roaming the desert throughout Africa. And it's your first pressure cooker. It's your first 5-in-1 foodie, right? All these cooking techniques in one little vessel.
The Instapot, the original.
That's exactly what it was. It was like this, and you get super tender, rich, delicious cooks on food that's typically like meat cuts of meat that are really, really tough. So, yeah. Next
Wow,
question.
what a history lesson. I'm like,
I will talk
it
food
just
history
makes
all
you
day
think
long.
about all the foods we eat, the Mexican food, the Italian foods, and we love the pizza, we love the tacos, we love every other, like you said, it brings us all together. And don't forget soul food.
Yeah. What is soul food? It's food that comes from the soul. Every country has its own version of soul food, right? You ask a Korean what is soul food, they'll think of a warm, comforting bibimbap that their mom made for them, right? You ask, everyone has their definition of what soul food is. It's food that comes from the soul, comes from the heart. No matter what we do, if we cook from our heart, if we cook food with love, it shows. It really does. There's something innate about cooking food in a beautiful way. And to end this quick history lesson, I'll give you one more story, and then we're gonna finish off this couscous and build our dinner. What is the most American dish of all of American cuisine? We have 300 regional varieties of it throughout the United States. It's the hamburger.
Oh, the hamburger.
Good old-fashioned hamburger. And so the smash burger came out of Oklahoma because they would smash patties during the beef shortage, and they would smash it with onions in it to try and, that's how the smash burger was created. It's from a beef shortage out of Oklahoma. But where did the hamburger come from? And 99% of people that know the story of hamburgers will say it came from, yes, I do make moussaka. It came from Hamburg, Germany. There were these German immigrants that came to America, and they had this beef patty that was covered in gravy, and they'd eat this beef patty, and it was called the Hamburg. Well, the world fairs were all the rage back in the day, right? So what they would do is they realized that the Hamburg couldn't compete with corn dogs and funnel cake and things on a stick. So what did they do? They ditched the gravy, put this Hamburg inside of a bun, and started calling it a hamburger. So most people think that the hamburger came from Hamburg, Germany, the immigrants of Germany that came from a city called Hamburg that came to America.
That's what I heard.
But in actuality, they learned it from the Russians. And the Russians learned it from this guy named Genghis Khan. Anyone know who Genghis Khan is? Name sound familiar at least? So Genghis Khan had these horseback riders who would ride all day because he was trying to conquer the world. And at night, they weren't allowed to light fires because they didn't want anyone to know where they were at. So in the morning, before they would ride their horses all day long, they'd take a slice of meat, wrap it up, and put it underneath the saddle of their horse. And as they rode their horse all day long, the bouncing would chop the beef. And the friction of riding the horse would cook the beef. And at the end of the night, they'd take their saddle off, and they'd take this beef patty that's been smashed and cooked from the heat and friction, and they would eat that burger without lighting a fire, so no one knew where the horseback riders were.
Wow.
That is the actual birth of the hamburger. Yes, he was Mongolian. He's the king of the Mongols. So,
Here.
let's finish off this couscous real quick. So what we have is the couscous drank all that water, right? And if you look, it's super, it's just clumped together, right? It's just this giant, massive clump. So what we want to do is we want to fluff this couscous in a very specific way. And I'll show you how we do it in the couscousier. Let me move some of this stuff over. and then we'll make this together real quick. So, can you guys see the bowl?
Yes.
Yep.
So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my hands, let me take my wedding ring off. I'm gonna take my hands, I'm gonna put a little bit of olive oil or neutral oil, whatever you want, and I'm gonna rub my hands together. So now what I do is I take these clumps of couscous and I massage them together. So A, I'm releasing the steam from the couscous. I don't know if you guys can see the steam, but B, I'm coating the granules of couscous with a little bit of oil. That little bit of oil will stop them from sticking together again, right? And the more we do this, the fluffier our couscous gets. And if you get big clumps you can't break apart, you just take them out and discard them, use them for something else, whatever you want. But this is the process for making super fluffy, super delicious couscous. So now when you do it like this, you'll see your grains are actually separate. They're not clumped anymore.
Mhm.
See that? We're getting individual grains of couscous. And this is, be careful, the first couple times you do this, it will be really, really, really hot, okay? How long do I let it steam? Typically about 4 or 5 minutes. And that's when I'll pull them out and start doing my thing, fluffing. So now to make our dish, we're gonna put this all together. You ready? I have a bowl here. In our bowl, I'm gonna put a handful of this fluffed couscous, no clumps, yes? I wanna go to heaven, so we're just gonna eat a lot of couscous today. Okay, to this, I'm gonna add a spoonful of charmoula. You can add as little or as much as you want. That's that sauce that we made in the food processor. And then I'm gonna add my vegetables from earlier. My sauteed vegetables, as little or as much as you want, yes? That's got some of that roasted butternut squash. It's got the zucchini, and now this green sauce is going to go ahead and perfume our whole dish. And you're gonna see our couscous will start to turn a slight green. And we have all this herbiness in this couscous. And I can fluff it as I do this. You see none of my grains are sticking together anymore. And this right here will taste absolutely amazing. Heavenly. But to take it a step further, we're just gonna take some of our greens that we just cooked with our olives and our preserved lemon. We're gonna give this a couple more olives because olives are delicious. And then, for posterity's sake, because I'm a restaurant owner and I can't serve a messy plate, clean the plate up. And here we have some raised beans called Bakoula.
That
Any
looks
questions?
amazing.
Yes, amazing, Chef.
I'm getting hungry.
Restaurant, please. Or your hours.
I'm sorry, what was that?
You talk about the
Yeah,
restaurant.
so right now, yeah, so currently our menus at the restaurant change every week, well, every couple of weeks. Right now we are Thursday through Sunday.
Please leave your message for
Thursday. Who am I leaving a message for? Thursday we're open from 4 to 8 or 5 to 8, 5 to 8 for dinner. Friday we're open 5 to 8 for dinner. Saturday and Sunday we're open. I'm sorry, Friday we're open till 9, 5 to 9. Saturday we're open 11 a.m. till 9, and Sunday we're open 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. So pretty soon the goal is to start offering a Moroccan style brunch, an authentic North African brunch. And these next 3 weeks we're going to be doing Moroccan batbout, which is a very specialty Moroccan sandwich. And then we'll transition. I'm trying to bridge the gap between now and spring, and I figure if I can run this sandwich menu for 3 or 4 weeks, that'll give me enough time to start getting produce in from my local farmers.
and we can then launch our spring menu for the spring. But keep in mind the menu changes here very regularly, and we try to keep things as seasonal as possible.
There was a question about, did you, is what we made tonight on the menu?
What we made tonight was on our winter menu. It just came off last week. So
Wow. Oh.
But you're gonna make it at home, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, what a-
exactly.
Oh,
I want
What's
you
your
all to see pictures when you make this. Tag
Can
me
you
on Instagram, Facebook, whatever. I want to see your versions of this dish.
Can you
yeah,
spell the name for us again?
For the dish or the restaurant?
The restaurant.
I'll put it in the chat.
Saffron.
Saffron De
Saffron,
Twah.
Saffron. Saffron is the most expensive spice in the world. We can actually grow saffron flowers here in Michigan, and it's the stamens from the flower. So each flower will only give you 5 threads of saffron, and it has to be hand harvested. There's no machine that can harvest saffron. So saffron right now is at $1,875 a pound. That's how expensive saffron is. So,
Like,
I still have any of your Valentine's dishes left. I do actually have a couple.
so what does it taste like?
What are they?
Saffron?
No, the Valentine's dishes.
Oh, we did this Moroccan dish called pastilla. And so it's this wedding dish. And it's Wadaka dough. Here's the problem is everyone in America makes it with phyllo dough, but it actually has to be made with a very special type of dough called Wadaka dough. And no one makes it here in America. So we actually make it ourselves here. And it's this really innate, elaborate dish. It's typically rabbit or pigeon or chicken or now fish. There's multiple varieties of it. And then it has this eggy custard that's made. And then it's all wrapped up and it's served dusted with powdered sugar and almonds. So it's like this sweet, salty, super savory dish, super delicious. What else did we do? We had...
Okay, that dish, do you make it vegetarian?
Yes, we made a vegan version for Valentine's Day. We made it with actually TVP mushrooms, a lot of the vegetables that you saw today roasted. Just get as much umami and flavor into this pastilla as possible. I actually like the vegan version better than I like the chicken version, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah, it does take 500 saffron flowers to make 1 ounce.
Oh, Lord.
Okay. Well, do we have any more questions for the chef before we wrap things up?
Where is the restaurant? Could you give the location of the restaurant, please?
Yeah, the address is 7636 Gratiot. We're actually on Gratiot just before you get to Van Dyke coming from downtown. So we're in between Warren and Van Dyke. And it's really hard to see because we're a little set back from the road. We're right across the street from a Dollar Tree, an Unbeauty Supply. I don't know why a place is called Unbeauty, but sure. And we're on the same side of the road as the Chase Bank.
And what's the name, please?
It's in the
Saffron.
chat. Yeah. The website is also in the chat. Saffron De Twah. Sorry to cut you off there.
Okay.
So, Chef, I saw you have a food truck. When is that out? Because the Keep Detroit Growing, he put the link in this chat box.
Yeah, so when I started, when I left fine dining, just like I was at roast with a bunch of other people and we all left to go do our own thing. I didn't have the money that Andy Holiday had to open Sullivan Standard. I didn't have the money that Les had to open Green Dot Stables. What I could afford was a truck. So I bought a food truck. And making food accessible in community was one of the most important things to me. So I thought, just because a community doesn't have access to food, doesn't mean they don't deserve good food. People tell me my restaurant's in a food desert all the time, and I have to correct them and say, we're actually food apartheid. We're not in a food desert because there's plenty of opportunity to open restaurants. No one wants to open out here. I was the only one that did it. So, yeah.
And that's why I have to say, we can't let downtown Detroit claim it. It's East Side.
Yes, it is. East side. It's not downtown. That's, you know? That's
Well,
right. East side.
We claim it.
That's
Yeah,
right.
Detroit,
That's right.
Detroit's one of the largest cities in the country, and people go, no, it isn't. Actually, by square mile, it is. We might not have the population, but to drive from one end of Detroit to the other, it's a jog, right? So
It's
yeah,
easy to get to, so we love you. Thank you.
no, I'm
Thank
so
you.
blessed and thankful
Thank
for you
you.
guys and the opportunity to come for you today and share, the food and love. And
Yes, great.
I look forward to seeing your guys' versions of these dishes.
Yeah, you encouraged me to do some research on my food history.
Yeah.
Do it. That's the amazing thing, right?
Yeah.
Thanks for opening the restaurant. Take it, on the east side. You could have opened anywhere.
Not gonna move anywhere, right? Yeah, no,
Good.
I'm blessed and grateful to be here.
That's right.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Omar, that was amazing. Really appreciate you. And with that, it's just nice job. And
Yes.
look for the
Yeah.
video on the YouTube channel, everybody.
Great
and
job.
We'll see you
Great
at the next
job.
one.
Great job. Oh my.
Thank you.
God.
Okay, good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
See you next time.
Bye.